Dr. Nancy Moonstarr, host of A Man's Guide to Intimacy Series 3, Bold Love with Passion. And I introduce a master love lover, coach, guide, sex educator, a believer in epic love, dating, and mating consciously at a spiritual level. And he mixes sex and spiritual common sense, manliness, everything that you could imagine, and gives men a good and a new paradigm for today's world. I'm welcoming Frank Mondeose.
Mondeose, yes, I am here. Thank you, Nancy. What a beautiful introduction. I don't think I've ever been seduced so early into an interview. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here already. How can I help you? How can I serve?
Oh, this is great. Well, I'm so excited to have you. And I think one of the things that jumped out to me about you, besides mixing spirituality and sexuality, which I'm all about and just thrilled to find more about, is this idea of we're in a new paradigm for men to date and relate. And I would love you to give the pillars. What do they need to know? What do men need to know today about dating and relating, relationship?
Yeah, so first and foremost, let me see where I want to take this, how, like, what level I want to attack this at. I would say for like a very accessible first level like tool that you could do, or it would be presence. Presence is the primary attribute, character trait that a beloved, a partner of any sex, is looking for when they are being met by a man in their masculine. This idea of presence is that when you are with an individual that you are interested in, that you're not getting distracted, that you are in the moment with every word that they're sharing. It's active listening, it's asking questions of interest, it's sharing with passion and pizzazz, reading into the body language, reading into the subtle wording language. And when I say reading into, it's like that is what to read into the dynamic of relationship. The trait that you need is presence, because if you're thinking about something else, if you're thinking about the sports game, if you're worried about your bank account, if you're looking that somebody's supposed to text you to do this other thing, and it's like you're just giving them the in between time, that doesn't foster or cultivate a bridge, nor does it create a level of safety and security where a potential partner is willing to open themselves into more vulnerability. And
Mhm.
when an individual opens up to more vulnerability, they are inviting you into deeper intimacy and connection. And I would say the cornerstone of that is presence.
Oh, that's nice. And I love how you mentioned guys with their phone, with their accounts, their money, their checking, those types of things. Because I was going to ask, what is it that challenges guys about presence? And also, if you would, if a man is at a very beginning with this whole concept of presence, kind of walk him into it with ABCs.
Right. So that's a beautiful question. So it's like, what's the biggest challenge with presence? Is presence. So let's break that down. So presence is a very, very simple aspect. As men, we feel like in order to be valued, we need to do something. We need to present something. We need to offer something. We need to entertain. We need to be in the action of doing in order to be like, see me. It's like this peacock thing. Look at me. I'm the best mate. Look how strong I am. Look how pretty I am. Look what I could do. A dance, a jig, a comedy skit, whatever it is. It's the doing. So it's not that. So that's where men get tripped up. They're so busy focused on like being the interesting mate that they actually fly right over what actually makes them interesting. And most beings that in the realm of becoming attracted to you want to see somebody that is interested in them. They want to recognize that this is a man that is willing to listen to me, allow me to be in my expression, invite me to divulge more of myself. And so presence is active listening. So let me see how else I could say this. So I also hold brotherhood journeys amongst the many things that I do. I do a lot of sexual shamanism, but one of the pieces I do is around brotherhood and how men can step in a greater step into their masculinity. And the cornerstone of that masculinity is presence. And one of the experiments we do to help men learn about presence is a challenge. It's a challenge. We put them in the right conditions of like many distractions happening around us, and inviting them to drop in with the person in front of them and be present, eyes gazing, noticing like the moment that my mind starts thinking of something else that will maybe allow my attention, my eyes to drift off. Or maybe there's a mosquito nicking at my neck, and like this is a distraction, so I'm going to go nick it off my neck. Well, we've lost presence. Every time we like go off from what is happening in front of us, we lose presence. And what I like to instill in my brothers in that healthy challenge of presence for the 5-10 minutes or what it is, where they're calling each other back into presence. The moment I lose presence, my brother taps me on the shoulder, bro, you lost presence. And what I like to tell my bros in that moment is that when we lose presence, bad shit happens. When we lose presence, bad shit happens. And so the example I give of this is like you could be in a consensual sexual interaction where there was the yes and there was the discussion of the desires and the boundaries and whatnot, and we could be like becoming intimate. But if I lose presence for a minute while I'm in the love making arena, I could lose the signal. I could miss the signal where her body freezes, where she loses her voice, and where something has shifted in her in the way she is showing up, that is telling me that I need to pause to check in to see what has shifted in her reality, so that I can be informed and move at her pace. So if you're not present, if you think you're present and then you lose presence for a second and you move forward in a moment of freeze, for example, that they freeze, you've just gone into from a consensual sexual exchange to a non-consensual exchange, which then is delivered as assault. And it's not because we were malintending or malevolent. It's because for whatever reasons we lost presence and we lost connection of the nonverbal that is playing out,
Mhm.
and it crosses over into gray area. And then once you're in gray area, now it's like we enter into defensiveness, but this, that, and that, the other. But so this is why it's like presence is that gift that allows you to stay in tune with the lover in every moment. And so when something shifts, you could tell when something shifts from hot to cold. And when it goes into cold, the responsibility of a man that is caring for his beloved, especially in intimate and vulnerable situations, is to recognize that something shifted. So I need to pause and I need to check in. And it's only with presence that we have that level of connection to subtle energy.
Wow, that was fabulous what you said. You covered so many points, but I like the idea that you, as a healthy male, are teaching other men to rise up, be this healthy man who notices when consent is lost. And that's such a delicate point. And women are really not taught to coach their guy or to help guys get that point or verbalize even. And can you talk a little bit about that? And I
Yeah,
usually talk about women aren't taught to speak up about those moments. And
Yeah, so a couple of things. There's two tracks here. The first one, it's not women's responsibility to teach men presence. If you want to be a successful man in the realm of love, eros, and relating, this is the skill you need to be getting outside. Go to like a tantra workshop or whatever it is, or a brotherhood journey or a masculinity journey. These are tools and that we need uh, as a prerequisite in meeting a woman or the feminine. It could be a man in the feminine as well. So it's the idea of moving into those relationships with the tools already. Going into intimate, vulnerable space and not knowing how to deal with those situations, and then expecting the other person to teach you, is a sure sign of a losing formula. And and that's the biggest challenge with brothers. It's not that they're bad people, it's that there's a lack of maturity. And not as an insulting statement, a banana when it's immature, it's not good to eat. When it's mature, it's freaking delicious. So it's either an immaturity or an ignorance. And when I say ignorance, again, it's not pointing the finger, it's you don't know when you don't know, you don't know, you don't know. So it's like, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. Now, if we go to the perspective of women, or somebody that's in a vulnerable state in the feminine, in an intimate situation, you're right. They weren't taught to say pause. They weren't taught to say that actually, one third into or halfway through or three quarters through an intimate relationship, if something no longer feels good in their body, that they should pause and connect and have a check-in. And what I've heard through the grapevine of women and their wounding and their trauma has a lot been like, they just bear through it. They just wait until it
Mm.
completes because they shouldn't be interrupting, and so on and so forth. And then by the end of it, they have to process this, whether it be very impactful or they think it's not a big deal because that's the way it's always been and that's the way they operate. And so they just repress that and they stuff that, and then eventually that forms like bonds of lack of trust, or lack of showing up for oneself. And so the message for women here is that you always have the right to pause. And I tell both men and women, if something shifts in energy that no longer feels the same or feels like an off point, I ask them, who's the person that should ask for the pause? And the answer is whoever notices first.
Nice, nice.
And
So,
so that all you're asking for is a pause. Let me feel into my body. So often, because we're always moving from the mind state, it's like, what does my mind think? What is my mind? But when we're in these moments, especially women that are in a moment of contraction, like they could be like, yes, 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 yes. Then something happens, a memory, whatnot, and their body goes in contraction. That moment of contraction is the moment that our body is asking them to pause. So it's the responsibility of the individual feeling the contraction, whether it's in your own body or outward, to pause and then taking some time and saying, what is this wisdom that's coming through? Oh, I don't know. If I don't know, I'm not sure, then I'm not a yes. If I'm not a yes, I'm a no. If I'm a maybe and not sure, I'm a no. Always default to practicing space. And what's difficult with men in this is because, for the most part, men are coming from a lack mentality, meaning like they don't have a lot of sexual abundance in their life. They don't have a lot of love abundance in their life, especially now during this moment of isolation and quarantines and whatever. It's like we're so like disconnected, so that when we're in a situation of intimacy and the opportunity to get our needs met, we're like a kid in a candy store. It's like, I need to eat, I need to eat, I need to eat, I need to eat. And it's like, when you're in that energy, that excitable puppy energy, you're not listening. You're not operating as a king. You are not operating as a lover. You're operating as a boy who is coming from a lack space. And as long as we come from lack space and we lose presence, we are sure to step on people's space and boundaries, step into their space and possibly cross their boundaries. So for me, I don't consider that elegant. I don't consider that charismatic. I don't consider that attractive. I don't consider that graceful. And it all comes from a lack energy and women smell and sense that lack energy from a mile away. And that's what could close them up. They could be in openness and excitement and curiosity. And then when they smell or feel that lack energy, it's like, oh, it's a turn off. So they close down. And so men might overstep those boundaries if they're not in the energy of presence and listening and willing to actually be in the present moment with what's available versus attempting to achieve a goal. And so what I mean by that is, like, if you're having a great makeout session where you're fondling each other and it ends there, we'll take that experience as like the treasure. It's like, wow, I got to make out and fondle this beautiful, amazing being. I didn't have that experience yesterday. I had it today. That's the gift. Now, if we're like, yeah, but I wanted a blowjob or I wanted to have sex, so I'm a bit bummed and I've got blue balls, that is like a loser energy. It's not coming from the place of um, being fulfilled with what you have. It's coming from the place it's never enough. And that again is a loser energy. And I say a loser energy because I'm attempting to, like, trigger or evoke emotional reaction, because it's important that we understand that we have this energy in ourselves. Until we have it filled, it is that. But recognizing that that should not be ruling us,
Mhm.
and that we should be coming from a place of love. And love is an energy of connection, and it's an energy of listening, and it's an energy of creating safety and allowing what wants to emerge authentically.
Mm. Wow. It does me so much good, and my heart feels happy as I see you exuberantly affirm what's right for a guy. That, if he senses anything, it's not her responsibility to coach and train him about presence. Get yourself into a place, get training, find someone, learn tantra, work with a brotherhood and a group, and um, tell us more about this. Brotherhood and this beautiful idea that being told by a guy, oops, you're not present anymore. What, yeah, tell us about that, because that, I just get chills. That's how.
Great, thank you. So about 2 years ago, myself and another brother came up with this idea. It's called the Remember Brotherhood Journey. Remember is spelled REMEN, like men, so remember. And it's a journey of remembering in our DNA, in our cells, that men were meant to come together and spend time together and sit in front of a fire together and teach each other and reflect each other. Now, when men come together, they come around together about sporting events or activities, or like drinking at the bar and the beer. And all this has been an appropriation of men's vital, focused, brotherhood energy. It's actually stripped the men from a deeper, vulnerable connection with other men, because when you have that circle of men to support, it's this piece where you're not going for to the woman to get your needs met, to be your coach, to teach you, to love you, to be your mother. It's like there's so much that we go to the woman for it, and it's like it's not attractive. So to create polarity with women, we have to get our shit together, and we get our shit together when we are having strong, healthy reflections from other men who are not trying to overpower you and dominate you, but are actually coming from the place of power sharing and supporting you to step into greater power so that you can be an impact being in the world. So the Remember Brotherhood journey is remembering that we are a circle of allies. It's also playing on the idea of the Isis Osiris Egyptian myth, where Osiris was cut up into 7 pieces or whatever number it was, and Isis had to go around the world and find every member and remember him. So the Remember journey is a bit, there's 5 shamanic rites of passage that we go through that are part of, like, first of all, like creating vulnerability, and then remembering you, putting you back together in a way that you show up as into the world, closer to the divine being that you are, a reflection of God here as a creator. And when we speak as a creator, what I'm speaking about is like your ability to create the life of abundance that you so desperately desire, but doing it from the perspective of not whining and looking from the outside and grasping and needy and like stealing power, but really coming from the place that if you hold yourself together with integrity, coming to wholeness. And so this was what I was going to say at the beginning of the conversation, is ultimately the journey for men in this time and every being is to come to self-love. And self-love is a big journey of recognizing ourselves as the beloved, as the ultimate beloved. And I could speak a whole lot about that, but the piece that comes out of this is that as we recognize ourselves as the first and foremost lover, then we know how to take care of ourselves, of our needs first. Because so often, again, we get a woman in our life, and then all of a sudden, it's like, what does the woman want? How do we serve her? And we give away all our sovereignty to maintain this relationship. And some women are really good at taking all of this energy and making it theirs and putting men in a box and handcuffing with, that's what the whole thing of the ball and chain storyline, right? And so when we come into recognizing ourselves as the ultimate beloved, and know that we must first care for ourselves and our boundaries so that we could be nourished, and if we're nourished, we could then give love to others. Love needs to come from this aspect of an overflow of generosity in our being, not that I'm empty and I need love from someone, so I need to hook them so that they could love me. This is not powerful, authentic love, because love is a generous act. And so to ultimately come into this generous act without selling your soul to another being and losing your sovereignty has to be the understanding of self-love. So we go through 5 rites of passage to support men to get a glimpse into the journey into self-love.
Mm, love it.
Mm,
And I
mm.
well, again, you're such a great role model because you're very straight away and telling men, quit whining. That's not what it's about. Quit smothering her and expecting her to serve as your best buddy, your wife, your lover, your friend, you're this, you're that, do it,
Yeah.
you do it every, yeah, that's not going to work either. And I love this phrase that men are the ultimate beloved to themselves, is what you were getting at. Wow.
Right, exactly, and women to themselves as well, because this equation of looking outside of ourselves for the ultimate beloved is actually an abandonment of ourself. So it is our first abandonment. It's the idea that without the other in my life, I am unlovable. And so the reason we get spun out when we are in toxic relationships and we just have an inability to step out of that relationship is due to the fact that if this relationship fails with this being, this one that I got to love me, pathetic old me, that she has stayed in my life for like 3 years, if I lose this person, like I'm talking about the subconscious, the shame, the fear, the woundedness of each individual, if this relationship fails, that proves that I am unlovable. So I will, regardless of the toxicity and abuse that's happening in the relationship, I will stay there because it's that energy, the reflection of love, outdoes the idea of I am alone and unlovable.
So so
Did I
he's
lose you?
well, let's see. So he's kind of holding on to this fantasy that's unreal, and he's looking outside for love rather than he's the beloved. He's the one that's giving that to himself. And so I'm
But you
hearing.
have to start there. You have to start there, because if you're constantly looking outside for the beloved to save you or to make you whole, like my better half,
Mhm.
That's like all like spells. Those are spells from the system that wants to keep you disempowered. Like, where's my better half? No, no, you are both halves. You are all of it. You are in until you recognize you're both halves and you are all of it, you cannot become creator. And so you're constantly going to be giving your power away to the outside world, this idea that there's something outside that I need to acquire in order to finally get into ease and love in my body.
Mhm.
And so that will have us, what I was trying to say was, it will have us hanging out for crumbs to maintain the facade of loving and being loved, rather than be alone and broken and do the healing work to fall in love with ourselves.
So how does a man balance this self work, this recognition of awareness, because I want to be aware as a man, and also make changes in a relationship or bring it along? So he's working on himself at the same time.
So you're talking about like coming to greater awareness that there's a personal growth path of like available to him, and while he's in relationship, and so like how to do this and what.
And keep the relationship going and even make changes. Say he becomes aware of, oh, I'm in an old program here. Um, I'm going to shift that. But where does he start to shift it in his relationship? How does he sort of balance that? Because he might not be able to become this big, bright being yet.
It's a journey. It's the that is the whole spiritual path. So when I speak about, spirituality and sexuality, or like I call myself sometimes on my YouTube the spiritual playboy, what does that all mean? It means that I am an organism that is recognizing that life is full of emotions and sensations, and that's what my 3D manifest body world is about. It's about desire and living and being filled with the pleasures of life that life has to offer us,
Mhm.
and at the same time recognizing that we are spiritual beings, and that the recognition of spiritual being means that you are willing to get on a path towards greater and greater and greater awareness. Now, the recognition that I'm a spiritual being, that I have the potential to grow, is first step on the spiritual path. So it's at that moment where you're like, okay, what am I being called to? And each individual has their own like entrance into the realm of spirituality. Some people will find yoga, some people will find meditation, some people will find healthy food, some people will find massage, other people will find tantra, other people will find landmark or one program, or this therapist that they're seeing, that they gave them the grain of salt, that gave them the path of to awareness and light and whatever. So each one of those opportunities is a path for you to know thyself better. And so, what I would say is, if you feel called, or if you've heard something multiple times, somebody say a suggestion twice, you never heard that phrase before, take the time, go on the internet, take a look at it, research, see if it stimulates you. Look in your area. Are there any of these courses being offered in your area? Um, uh, go to a meetup, join a Zoom call that is having a conversation. Like, there's a million and one ways of entry points into networks of people that are really there to serve you to get into greater consciousness. Now, what's beautiful is that um, they're all equal. You know what like when I say they're all equal, is if you're coming from nowhere,
Yeah.
that is the opportunity, and just continue. What I say is continue to follow your sunshine. If something supported you to for your heart to melt a bit, or your heart to open up a bit, or something that supported you to do an introspection, and that you got some level of aha revelation or whatnot, that has supported you to take a pivot point, to pivot in your life, that is spirituality. You're doing it. There's no destination. It's the consistent walking on the path of searching for pivot point after pivot point that uh, supports your life to get on the most powerful road that brings you to self responsibility, courage, sharing of your heart,
Mhm.
and love, power, and freedom. So these are your guiding points. And sometimes relationships can flow and grow together. And other times relationship, quite honestly, need to end in order for you to go on to the next level of awakening. And that's what I was talking about. I was talking about like the inability to let go of that relationship, because if I let go of it, it means it's a failure. And if I'm a failure, it means I'm unlovable. Certain moments, if a relationship is toxic, you need to release that relationship because there is more abundance coming to you, and you cannot access it as long as you choose that the toxic relationship that you're in is what you deserve.
Mm, great, that's helpful. And I also want to go back to this aha moment. So when he comes to an aha moment, and as he's going to pivot, that was kind of what I was talking about, the balancing of blending. Let's say he's not ready to be this superhero, but
Yeah.
how can he step into a pivot? How can he how
So a a pivot point is, and it could be it's anything from a grand revelation that has you like saying, I need to dedicate more of my life to XYZ. And then this is like what religion, appropriates, and it takes all that energy and it takes your power away because you have to give it to this organized religion that has certain thoughts and beliefs and whatnot,
Mhm.
to the slightest moment where you're in nature and you see a sunset, for example, and in that moment you get a realization that you know um, you need to quit your job, or you recognize that you're going to choose a life with more joy, and then later on, 3 days later, you're like, where am I on not, where do I lack joy and what needs to change? Oh, my job is a big sense of contraction, fatigue, and so on and so forth. That is draining me. I need to leave my job. And that's a pivot point. So pivot points are anything from a subtle realization that is having me looking at life through these blinders my whole life. And the pivot point was saying, oh, I could turn my head and actually I continue to see that whole side, but there's this whole new reality that exists here. And I didn't even know it existed. And that reality is inspiring me to go deeper into knowing thyself, knowing myself,
Mm.
or learning more tools, or becoming a bit more mature or knowledgeable, that will give me greater access to success when I'm with another. And that might lead to another pivot point, because now you will have met somebody that is inspired by your presence and will have never been met that way. And I could go on and on of the potential. What I'm speaking into is potential. But the answer to your question, bottom line, is pivot moment points can be big revelatory instances that completely change your life forever, to small little things that give you greater awareness towards a part of your life that you've never seen before, that gives you greater awareness to know yourself better, and therefore work on that to open more of your potential.
Okay, and I'm also hearing that presence is opening up this creative avenue of potential. And
Without presence, you can never even be in the vibration of being able to receive revelation. This is why we do meditation. Meditation is this piece of going internal. It's being present with your internal body, shutting off the noise. So it's being present with your essence, your beingness,
Mhm.
without the noise of the mind. We're trying to shut that off as much as possible to allow the body to be in reception.
Okay,
And
nice.
so the body, in meditation, your body is in reception. It's allowing that moment of a spark, to that a drop of an idea to be dropped in and say, oh, that's what I need to maybe pay attention to. Or did I just a memory of something, that, oh, something important. Oh, I forgot to lock the door in my house. I can't believe it. I need to pick up the phone and call somebody. It's that intuitive hit. It's that ability for you're, even to go a bit esoteric, the opportunity for your soul to drop a message for you that your personality would not hear because it's so busy doing and like in action. Personality is trying to be an identity that's in action and doing and working and whatnot, whereas when you're present being in meditation, you have the opportunity to for the personality to step out of the way and for the soul to drop into the message to where you're actually supposed to be putting your energy towards.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to the ABCs. So let's say a man's listening to this and he's getting it, but he's either afraid to make steps in that new pivot, and the pivot could
Yeah,
be that he's got to get a mission, he's got to get he's got to be an entrepreneur. It could be, I need to touch her differently, I need to attend her, I need to be more present, I need to
right.
talk to her. It could be anything. So he's, let's just say, pick one of those. It could be,
Yep.
I need to be more present to her. That's why she's prickly when I walk into her space or come in
Right.
the front door. So let's say he wants to pivot, but he's like afraid, or he's unknowing, or he's awkward. He doesn't even know what to do with this new aha. How does he do it in a way that you could sort of encourage him to begin stepping on that path, but and not,
I
you know,
would say get support. I would get support. This is the brotherhood piece, right? I came into an aha. It's tiny. It's actually may have brought up like difficult, crunchy internal experiences, because sometimes those ahas are like, I've been operating from a very like jerk basis, and I'm realizing that my behavior is insensitive. And so if a man realizes that his behavior is insensitive, he could go two ways. He could get even defensive to himself and just stuff that, no, 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 this is the way it is, and just like double down on the fog, so that that's the repression and suppression of the vulnerability. Or he could be like, shit, I recognize something. I've been not coming from the best source. Like my come from has actually been a bit muddy. And I recognize it's because I have like some difficult feelings around this, that, or the other. Now, you only really start to unpack that if you could get support. And you have to get support from somebody that you could trust and that is willing to, that you're willing to get vulnerable with, because that's the brotherhood piece. It's like, as men in the past, when we're hanging out doing pizzas and beer and sports and UFC and what, vulnerability is not the top priority. Machismo is more the act of it. And so this is old paradigm thinking. So that's okay. There's no judgment of that. There's a time and place, and that feeds our primal and whatnot until it gets unhealthy. But that's another conversation. But vulnerability, to have a space where I could drop into with a brother, somebody in my life that I know could hold space for me and listen to me as I unpack these heavy realizations. Or I could pick up and call a person like Frank, who is completely unbiased, doesn't really care what you've done in your life in terms of the difficult the mistakes you've made, and like be witnessed in your coming to awareness of that and ask for help. This is the piece. It's like, brother, I need help. Can you give me any kind of reflection of what you see that I'm doing that is creating this situation? Or can you support me to give me any kind of sunshine that will guide me to show up as a better man? So
yeah.
it's a vulnerability and a humility,
Mm.
and a request for support.
Wow. Yeah. You're really, re-emphasizing and underscoring and reinforcing men connecting to men. That's a great reminder. And, we don't hear that enough, do we?
No, not at all. And this is what I'm discovering. Like, I'm an only boy with two sisters in my family, very strong women. And I've never really had that reference point towards brotherhood. And then the reference point I've had towards brotherhood in my previous life was one of betrayal, that the two brothers ended up with my ex-wife and my next girlfriend. So like, I don't have a very good like vibration with brotherhood until I started doing my personal development work. coming into the self-love piece. And then I started magnetizing good men in my life, and then seeing like these are brothers that are willing to see me and hold me in my brokenness when I need to, like when I trip, I'm not alone. I have a brother that's there to pick me up and say, hey, get up, it's all good, you could do this. And so the five brothers that I've developed Remember Brotherhood journey with, we have a commitment to speak on a weekly. Of course, we're always working on projects, the next Remember journey. So there's some business in there, but in between, there's moments where one of us is like having a child, the other one is a new father, the other one is going through a difficult breakup, the other one is looking for more power in his life calling. And so just sitting and chit chatting. This is what I talked about: sitting by the fire, not in the doing, but in the being, in the sharing of our heart space, and then the openness to receive reflection and cheerleading. Basically, we cheerlead each other. It's so funny. We're the brotherhood, and yet we're cheerleaders for each other. And we're also there offering support and resource if and when it's available and or requested. And to me, that is a game changer. Like, when I stopped making my girlfriends my coaches, they became much more attracted to me. Like, there's nothing more unattractive. Like, there's beauty in the vulnerability of a man showing his softness to a woman, like showing his sensitivity. But that's one thing. Going to the beloved as like, I'm broken, I need support, can you help me, put me back together and coach me into this? That is a absolute desire killer.
Mm.
And so instead of, and then we say, oh, but I can't be vulnerable in front of men, I could only be invulnerable in front of another woman. That's again this limited belief of we need to go to women to answer all our needs. Well, Alva, if you open to men, then you just gain 100% of the demographic to have more support.
Mm.
Like, you just open the floodgates to more support in your life when you start surrounding yourself with more conscious men. And
Wow.
seek that out. That's what I mean. Seek it out. Go on online, see what interests you, do some exploration. What I've learned is, like, I trust what comes to me. I trust the synchronicity of one thing leads to another, and that's the treasure. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to move towards that treasure, and then other doors, paths, and momentum builds to you. And that's the thing we're looking for. I'm glad I said that. Momentum.
Mm.
Once you go start opening these doors, investing in your aha moment, researching, choosing a pivot point, calling in support, now we have momentum behind us. And that when we have momentum behind us, then the universe meets you. If you're just sitting in the back and complaining and hoping, I always tell men, stop hoping. It's a loser energy. It's like, we know you have to believe in hope, or it's like, or I'm hoping. I keep telling men, it's like, hope is a loser energy because it puts you in a passive of being like, if something on the outside world changes, then maybe I will get rescued. That's
Mhm.
hope. Whereas I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for momentum. I'm looking for wind in my sails. And that's what this talk, and why I chose to do this talk and the commitment to this talk, is because part of my gift that I'm trying to offer to the world is to inspire men and beings, women and all genders included, to step into the crunchy spaces of their life, to clear those aspects and come into more truth of oneself and bring greater love so that we can be greater lovers.
Mm. Mm.
And that's what I'm inspiring. So
Beautiful.
forget about the hope, be with inspiration. The root word of inspiration is the Latin word inspiritu. Inspiritu to means to be with spirit. So I'll just drop that.
Thank you. And I want to thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing this idea of betrayal, because men do get betrayed by other men in a lot of ways. And that was so tender. So I want to put that on the table, and anything you want to maybe elaborate or just help men with that?
Yeah, I think that, men experience, I'm going to make a rash generalization. I'm not speaking as like I've done a scientific analysis on this, but I would say that betrayal in the in men is, if you ask them and you learn the right questions to ask them to open up for their heart space, I would say that men experience betrayal a lot more than we think, but not only from men, even from women. The idea that men are trying to show up, they're giving themselves to the relationship, and then they're manipulated or abused or mistreated. In this current time, we like to look at Me Too, and we look at the abuse towards women, and that's without a shadow of a doubt that exists, and that we need to do a recalibration of power and abuse of power. But the idea that abuse is limited towards women and men are not subtly being abused emotionally or mentally is wrong, and that is the betrayal. That I want to serve you, I want to take care of you, and then I'm being manipulated for your ends or whatever. That is a broken heart. So this is what I want to create a visual connection to is women. The receptive aspect of the woman, or even the concept of the feminine, is the vagina. So the vagina, or we would say in tantra, the yoni, or in, I like to say, the pussy. It's just choose your word. So the entrance point of intimacy and reception is the yoni. It's this aspect of being penetrated. When they are penetrating, they are opening themselves completely vulnerable to be entered and filled. Men don't realize what a vulnerable act that is. We're just looking to put our cock in things and do our thing. But the act of opening and being entered is a vulnerable act. So the feminine is in the reception in her yoni, and she's in her giving, the active, from her heart. Her heart gives energy. The feminine gives energy from the heart and receives energy from the yoni. Whereas the masculine gives energy through his cock or his lingam, and receives energy through their heart. So if we think about how protective women are about their yoni and who enters that, consider how men feel about their heart. And this is why men are so armored and closed and emotionally repressed, because at a very young age, whether it be the parent, the mother, the father, the sibling, the brother, the sister, the best friend, who insulted or took a shot at that gentle heart of the innocent boy that didn't know better, that was never taught, that was never initiated, that was never coached on how to be a man, and then messes up, and then is told he is bad and that he is wrong and that his sexuality is shameful and you should be guilty because you have created all these eons of abuse, and all of a sudden, like, there is no place to open the heart. This is the reaction of the little boy in every man. So the same way, so I'm just trying to make like an imagery, example
Beautiful.
of
Yeah.
of emotional connection to the vulnerability of reception. Whereas a woman is like, don't enter me until I'm ready, or wise women or awakened mature women should be in the place there, nobody enters my temple until I give a clear yes, whether it be a doctor or a lover. It's, this is my temple, you enter when I'm ready for you, and you enter with reverence and grace and love. That's the if we did that and the gentleness of that, then women would open their legs more. And this is ultimately what men want. We want the women to open their legs more so we could be out of the lack of the physical, so that we could actually show up from a heart space. And the heart space only melts when we feel trust and intimacy, and that intimacy often comes from the sexual aspect. So if you want a man to like open his heart, just recognize that how vulnerable it is for you to open your sex, and then you'll understand how vulnerable it is for a man to open his heart.
Wow, that's really great. I hadn't heard it put like that, and that makes so much sense that her yoni and his heart are both the most vulnerable spots for each of them.
So betrayal, so if we bring this back to betrayal, a man's heart has been betrayed, but not from, doesn't have to be from the best friend who ends up with the ex-wife. That is like the gross expression of it. To me, that's the caricature that is the spiritual playboy's life. You know, like the whole like spiritual playboy concept is a caricature of my energy and my past and whatnot. So it's only normal that the betrayal that the spiritual playboy is gonna have is like this huge, heartbreak of the best friend. But like I want to bring it down to like everyday moments. The first betrayal is the first moment of abandonment of the parent, of the father, of the mother. That's the first betrayal.
Mm, yes.
And so when we're not meeting ourselves with that level of understanding, and we're coming from the very top level, superficial, I need to get my needs met, pussy, sex, money, whatever, like you're just really, that's just coding the levels with sugar.
Mm,
This is why we're overweight and and diabetic and whatever. It's because we are and smoking a lot of weed, tobacco, weed, alcohol. It's because we're dulling the fact, the cornerstone of that we all have had a journey of loss of love, of betrayal, of some level of another, that has had an imprint of um, wounding, and therefore derailing ourselves from the natural progression of expression of the heart-centered beings we all came here to be.
mm, that's a mouthful.
Indeed. And so this is why my whole work of everything I do, whether it be with the International School of Temple Arts, my personal online courses that I'm doing with loveandarrows.com, which is coming out in a few weeks or months, and the Remember Brotherhood journey, like all this content is the shamanic path towards personal healing, so that we can know ourselves and heal those betrayed or wounded spots of ourselves, so we could become more masterful lovers. This is what we want to be. We want to be masterful lovers. We want to be told that we're great, and that we satisfy the goddess's needs and desires, and that we could feel pride in the fact that we are enough in that. But you really can't be the really masterful lover until we work through the subconscious triggers that are throwing us into our childhood wounds.
Wow. Wow. So we don't have much time left. If
No.
if there were three sort of points that you bullets that you might give guys about this masterful sex, you covered a lot about it already. What would you have them maybe take away?
So here's some good stuff. Number one, it has to be presence. Again, I told you the presence piece is the piece that allows us to hone in our listening. The second piece is listen. And I'm not talking about listen with the ears. I'm talking about listen with the sixth sense, which is a body sense, which is a smelling sense, which is um, a read. It's in the shamanic realms. The shamanic realms is like something changes in the energetic relating that tells you, oh, now my nipple wants to be touched. Actually, now my neck wants to be touched. That's the quality of listening. It's the ability to so with presence and listening, you are able to tune into the frequency of how her energetic body wants to be touched. When we come into that level of understanding of how her body wants to be touched, then we're not just like pressing buttons and turning dials and then trying to get it right. It's because no, we're listening, we're feeling, and slow the F down. Slow down, slow down, slow down. When we slow down, what ends up happening is we allow for the feminine to demonstrate her expression and her interest, and all those expressions, those oohs, their ah, those yes, these are all the cues of the on the roadmap. So if you're barreling down the road saying you think you know and I'm going to make you feel, you are not in the listening, you're not in the slow, you're not in the ability to read the energetic body. And so then when we slow down, and then after that, um, is the piece of meeting the beloved with where they're at, whether it be in their pleasure. So you're mapping their pleasure, you're egging on their pleasure, you're creating the yes through the deep listening and the stimulation or foreplay.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we are also deeply satisfied
Mhm.
with what we receive because that is the gift, and
Mhm.
we're not looking for the next thing. And the more we rest in the deep satisfaction of what we're getting, the more that the feminine wants to open to us, because there's not a grasping energy.
Mhm. I'm just taking notes while you're talking too. Wow, that was
Sure.
great. Those are wonderful points. So,
Thank you. Maybe you could summarize my notes and send them back to me. I'll use them in a book or something eventually.
oh, so let me move then to asking you if you have a free gift, something that you're going to offer the audience.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, loveandarrows.com is my new website. It's coming out shortly. What it is a catalog of basically all my knowledge that will support you to greater personal mastery. And then we'll get you into like the pragmatic aspect of touch essentials and so on and so forth. But what's going to be coming out one step at a time is how to get into emotional mastery so that we can show up as better beings and then lovers. So my free gift is a course called Connection. It's a 15-minute free video of supporting people to number one, the basic 4 keys of Tantra. So the 4 keys of Tantra, which make us better lovers, which can change your life if you dance with them, as well as the 4 information centers in our body, which we can listen to when making a decision that will support us to make decisions that are better informed than either being led by the mind or the cock.
Wow. Hey, that's a great ending right there. Oh, anything else before we close that you want to say or contribute?
Yeah, I'm a great proponent to men to step into greater power. I am a lover of women and an ally, and I too want you to step into your power and both of our responsibility. This piece of being able to respond to what the world is bringing us, not moving in reactivity and therefore drama and separation. So we each have a responsibility to show up and clear up those messes that we've made and be greater beings to each other. And like I like to end any of my podcasts or my web shows, I always say, let love free, because that is the only way we will ever change anything.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you for your time. Yes, and this generous, beautiful share that you did. I so appreciate, and I'll say bye for now.
Thank you, my pleasure.